This next module is about the Gilded Age. And the Gilded Age, some people say starts in like 1865, so right after the Civil War, but it's coincided with Reconstruction and the closing of the frontier. So all of these things are going on at one time. But the big thing you need to know about the Gilded Age is this is the second industrial revolution in the United States. And this is going to cause the United States to become this incredible global superpower at the end of the 19th century. So far, we've covered the end of the Civil War and the beginning of Reconstruction. So remember, Reconstruction is when the United States had to come back together, and there were lots of different ideas on how that should be done, lots of different resistance movements that happened, because really people were not ready for all of the changes after the Civil War. Going along at the same time is the closing of the Western frontier, and you learned about that in chapter 16. And then that'll bring us to the Gilded Age, which is characterized by a bunch of presidents that you probably don't remember, like this guy, Chester A. Arthur, and a lot of other presidents who didn't really do all that much. But all of these things are linked together. So the Gilded Age refers to this era of rapid industrial growth and rapid economic and population growth in the United States after the Civil War. The term comes from Mark Twain. So this term, the Gilded Age, refers to a process called gilding, which is covering something that is not fancy, not nice, in a superficial layer of gold. So this is like wood and it's covered in gold. So it's pretending that it's really nice when really in actuality it's just regular wood. It's nothing fancy. So he's referring to this time period in that it seems really nice. It seems like there's a lot of growth, a lot of economic growth, population growth. The United States is growing really strong, but underneath it there are a lot of very damaging side effects on the people in the country. So the big thing that you're going to be looking at, and you're going to be looking at two chapters in this module, the big things is you want to look at production and how production changed, transportation, so beyond just railroads, there's all kinds of new transportation at the Gilded Age as well. Huge increases in immigration, and that leads to huge increases in nativism. The rise of the city, so people are flocking to the city because there's lots of economic opportunity there, but then as a result there's a lot of other side effects as well. I mean, you learned about this in world history, and if you remember playing the urban game in your world history classes where you keep building more and more stuff and things get dirty and they get dangerous. And so the same thing is happening in the United States just about 100 years after what's happening in Europe. There is a decline in population in rural areas, so people are leaving the farming areas for the cities. There's a rise in corruption in the city, and you'll learn about that. You'll learn about Boss Tweed, and you'll learn about all these different party bosses and how they're starting to control different industries and the politics of major cities. And as a result of corruption, as a result of immigration, as a result of new types of production, there is a rise in union activism, and you'll learn a lot more about that in this section as well. So there are some big unions that start to develop that are still around today, and in many cases they form these protests that turn deadly in some cases. So you'll be reading about that. We talked a little bit about nativism, but then also racism. And then all of those things are going to lead to reform. And that will be in module 5 when we talk about progressivism. So we have all of this yucky stuff that's kind of gilded with gold. And then later on, we have these progressives who want to fix the problems of the industrial society. So big things you need to know kind of contributing to this is we have a two-party stalemate. So Republicans and Democrats at this time are tied. So we don't see a lot of changes really between political parties. I mean, we have a couple of Republicans, most of them are Republicans, but a couple of Democrats too. But you can see that it's pretty much tied right across in the middle. We'll see the government being very laissez-faire, and you remember that from world history too. So we call that the do-little government. So the government kind of stays out of the economy, which causes a lot of growth, but then also causes a lot of negative things that happen. And the president is seen as more of a symbolic office, not someone who's like a really strong leader. So that's why you probably don't remember any of the presidents from the Gilded Age. Like maybe Garfield, because he died pretty early on, so he's kind of famous for that. But Benjamin Harrison and Grover Cleveland, all these names that maybe you remember from like the president's test that you took in 8th grade, but you probably don't know much about them because they really didn't do all that much when they were in office. So as you read these two chapters, really focus on these specific things and all of these things, because all of these things are going to transform the national economy, which later on will lead to the United States becoming a huge global superpower, and they'll take over lots of different countries all over the world just in the next decade that we cover.